I read in your profile, it is about transforming business from the sellers to influencers. So that's a great
Hmm.
ideology. Can you share more about it and how you are supporting or how we can support brands into this?
Sure, sure. So if you look at the entire B2B buyer landscape is changing. Their attitude is very different today than what it was, say, probably a decade back. One crucial driver behind this change is the major increase in the level of competition and disruption that's happened in the digital marketplace. And then you have the the buzz of social media around that. So the consumers of today have access to much broader roster of products and services. So as a result of which, there is increasingly shorter product life cycles and new entrants that entice the customers with exciting alternatives to consider. So this requires the sales team to work very closely with the marketing team to showcase thought leadership that influences the buyer decision making. So if you look at the current buying process itself, earlier the salesperson would be talking to the customer through cold calls or any such thing, right? So now that's completely gone. Now, in fact, customers will actually research about your brand even almost 90% before they reach out to you for that last 10% conversation which is needed. And that's when, as a salesperson, you are getting into the realm of digital selling. So you need to also showcase your expertise. You need to showcase that you understand their problem. You need to showcase that you understand their industry and where it is heading towards. And hence you are sharing content and perspectives which will help them to influence their decision making. So there was this recent research by Edelson which said that over 42% B2B decision makers are actually willing to pay a premium to service providers who demonstrate strong thought leadership itself. So that's like a huge perspective to look into. So that's where it is that shift from being just a seller to being an influencer comes into picture. And my firm Thought Starters, we work closely with different brands in helping develop programs or creating research or building thought leadership content, which can help the salespeople position themselves as experts, influence the customers, and thereby get better ROI for the marketing campaigns. So that's how you move from just selling to actually influencing the buyers.
That's right. And since you are an author and doctorate professor also, would you like to share some case study or some research findings which can help us understand the concept little more?
Sure, sure. So in my research, with the B2B community, so primarily I operate in the B2B space. So these would be companies which are either technology firms, product firms, or anything which is more knowledge intensive, consulting firms, etc. So when we carried out a research to understand, the buyer attitude or the buyer preferences, it was interesting to see that only 5% of the B2B decision makers believed that the content that they were receiving from their service providers actually was demonstrating thought leadership. Whereas when you actually ask marketers, they say that, yeah, we are increasing our spends in content marketing. So every year on year, there's a substantial increase that's happening, and hence we will get better ROI. But the buyers didn't believe that. Only 5% of them actually said, you are demonstrating thought leadership with whatever programs or content that you're doing. So that was a wake-up call in a way to say that, how do we then help out marketers to better create these programs so that you are increasing that thought leadership and credibility with your customers. So that's where and this was part of my research piece also, where I developed a framework called as the 5F framework. So I talk more about this in the book as well. So essentially it looks at 5Fs. The first one is focusing on the customer. The second F is being fact-based. Third is having a fresh perspective. Fourth is facilitating knowledge sharing. And fifth is fixing attention. Now, I will just spend a couple of minutes to explain how this typically works. So the first F we are talking about is the focus on the customer. Many times what happens in the marketing teams is that they don't spend so much on gaining insights into who the customer is, what is the customer buying persona, what is the customer journey looking like. Many of them don't even define a customer journey map. So without getting that insight, you just go about creating content and later you figure out that it's not giving you the desired ROI. So it's very important, firstly, to get that customer intelligence with respect to who your customer is, where are they seen, what are they looking for, what are the competition sharing with them, is it servicing the request or no? Do you need to look at something which is beyond that? So that becomes the first step, focusing on the customer. The second F is the fact-based. So here again, whatever programs, whatever content that you create, if you back it with good data, and that comes from either primary research or secondary research, it has a lot more weightage. So me telling you that yeah, thought leadership is very important and you need to be focusing on it is one thing, and me telling you that 5% of only 5% of B2B decision makers actually believe that what you're sending to them as thought leadership is actually thought leadership. Or to say that 42% of buyers are willing to pay a premium if you demonstrate thought leadership. Now that makes a significant impact because you're validating your point of view with actual data. So it's very important that any company which is looking into building thought leadership should actually take a research-based approach. Now, if you have capability in-house, you can do that. Otherwise, you can outsource it to research firms, or you can even partner with academic universities or research firms or analyst firms to do this kind of research. The key is to actually have that data to back your opinion. The third F is fresh perspective. Now here again is where a lot of marketers tend to go wrong. Most of the content that you will read anywhere are all Me Too content. So why should a customer actually look at you and consider you to partner with them vis-a-vis your competition? That's where having a unique point of view becomes very, very important. And all this is again stitched back to the earlier two Fs, right? So if you've understood your customer well, you know what they're looking for and hence what is the gap, and you're able to give your perspective there. Two, if you have done good research, you will have data which shows, okay, this is the trend and hence nobody has been talking about it, and let me now create a perspective around that. So these three Fs all stick together. The next F is facilitate knowledge sharing. Now, again, what happens, the mistake which a lot of marketers again do is when they create any content, they gate the content. It is, it is believed that if you actually put up gated content, people will download that and you will get a lead and, you will take it forward. But look at it from the buyer side. The buyer, the moment you have gated content, knows that if I fill up my details, that you will start bombarding me with sales related messages. So they will tend to drop out. So it's very important that in the initial phases, at least, keep your content as freely available as possible. You need to spread the word. You need to spread the knowledge that you are building. Only then people will know that yes, you are, having a unique point of view. You have good research. You have good knowledge about the system, and then I will talk with you. Or even if various content assets that you're creating, identify which alone you want to get and which you want to give it as free. Don't go and get all the content. The key is to actually facilitate that knowledge sharing with with as many people as possible. Many times you don't know. Actually, they could also become your influencers. So some analyst would have read your research. So tomorrow when he's on a board meeting with a client, he may actually say, have you checked out so-and-so company? They had this interesting research and they have a good point of view. Why don't you talk to them, right? So it's important to facilitate that knowledge sharing. And the last F is fix attention. So here, the key is how interestingly are you presenting your content? Now, there are different channels that you would be looking from a marketing standpoint, and each channel will require the content to be done in a particular way, right? So if you're doing it as an infographic, if you're doing it as a video, if you're doing it as an article or a blog, each of it needs to be done in an interesting manner. Again, if you do not have expertise in-house to do that, there are experts who can help you do that, but it's important that you're getting these fundamentals in place. And only when you do that is where you see substantial impact. So a good case in point for this would probably be IBM. So if you look at any of the campaigns which they do, or if I take their global CXO study, which they've been doing for years now, they've built a property out of that. So all that they've done is basically understood the customer, what the customer is looking for. They've put in solid research into it. They have a unique perspective of saying how the future is going to look like. They share this content across platforms, and they created it in an interesting manner so that you're fixing the attention. So that's how companies can actually, or marketers can actually go about creating impactful thought leadership programs.
I mean, this is fabulous, and I loved, in fact, the IBM example that you mentioned, because at that point of time itself, immediately it cracked in my mind that yes, whatever they share about it, it's majorly into case studies, content, and all. So
Yeah.
this is right.
So,
This
so they
is
have
nice.
different things, right? So they have case studies, they have research, they have videos which they put out, they do panel discussions around that, they've created a podcast series around it. So everything is integrated, and there each one of it is very interesting to consume, right? So that's how you actually build the impact. But the key is they understand the customer well, and they invest in solid research, and they have a unique point of view. So that's the key three elements to look into it.
That's right. That's right. Phenomenal. Amazing.